Hello, Deepika. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Now that we meet, so I'm much better. I was actually looking forward for a chat today, so really appreciate the time. And by the way, we do that on Sunday, so I guess you have a very busy week during the working days. Yeah. So Deepika, for the listeners who don't know you, it'll be a great place to start, probably by you introducing us to your background and experience in the industry, and you can start from whatever you feel it's relevant.
Yeah, I'll start with my current position. So I'm a director of product at Pepsi in the e-commerce group there. So we call it digital commerce at Pepsi. And what that means is when Pepsi sells products online, right, or when an order is generated online, that's what my group manages. So I've been in e-commerce, I would say on and off for about maybe 10 years, right? So I did a fashion marketplace startup about 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And after that, I also worked on Amazon Alexa. Although I worked for Amazon, I think it was good exposure for me to know how Amazon did e-commerce. But overall, my general motto of life has been to go where sort of technology can disrupt the status quo. So I've gone to different industries without any fear of knowing what that industry is about, learned about it, and seen how technology can break some barriers. So that's what got me to this PepsiCo journey so far.
Yeah, and you always been in those uh, intersections of technology and commerce, general commerce, right? And I know you also started as an engineer in Intel, even, and then obviously the marketplace, the fashion marketplace startup, and Amazon Alexa. And I know today you are managing the product in Pepsi. How the obviously the technology has so much influence on our lives. Definitely, last probably a couple of years with the introduction of AI. How are you see things evolving in the industry from technology perspective, commerce? How are this are actually working together?
Yeah. So what's interesting is you'll be surprised that even to this day, right, credit card penetration in the United States, how much do you think it is? Can you can you
Uh,
take a guess?
Double digit for sure.
Right?
20%, 30.
Yeah. So it's still like about 20%, and it's
Yeah.
such a low number if you really think about all the transactions we do on a daily basis
Hmm.
as a regular person. You begin to notice that, wow, there is a huge opportunity to like see this, evolving into e-commerce payments and people becoming more and more comfortable with that. So
Hmm.
I start my whole thesis based on like what the customer is like, right? Let's just like think about who we are today and what are our requirements. And I think COVID really in the world of CPG and groceries, COVID really changed that, right? People are more and more comfortable with sitting and ordering things from like their homes, which means that the pressure on these companies surrounding that ecosystem is very high also, right? Which is I want the payments to work beautifully. I want things when I want it, at the quality I want it, at the cheapest price, right? People are not, that discerning when it comes to certain staples. So every aspect has to be thought of as we think about how we're building these quote unquote platforms around this ecosystem. And then the applications of AI come in where I think we have to understand this world is moving so fast that we're not able to keep up with human, information alone. So we need different information that we can make data that we can analyze and actually compress that timeline, right? So I call AI a multiplier, right? I say, if I can do something 10 times better by automating something, hopefully AI will be able to give me that for and do it 100 times better, right? So what does that do to you, right? To you and me sitting at home and ordering our groceries, let's say. It adds value back to our lives, right? 30 minutes per day or whatever per week that I don't have to go do grocery shopping, fantastic. I'd rather sit and do it at home, right? And that gives me time to read a book maybe or play with my child maybe and and so
Hmm.
on. So it just improves our quality of life a lot more. And so I see that investments in infrastructure are going to increase tremendously. Investments in like how we think about reaching our customers is going to increase tremendously, and our core technologies that back up, right, supply chain, data, all of those things will become very, very valuable very fast. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And obviously, for AI to work in all these aspects of the business, the data is fundamental, right? And we know how data collection is becoming more and more difficult these days because of the multiple channels, multiple communities, so many different journeys. Attribution is becoming, a challenge. So let's start maybe from this foundation. How do you see data is implemented, and what are some of the best practices around this topic?
yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? So the data becomes so important because what are we looking for through the data? We're looking for patterns, right? So if I start to observe patterns, I learn from those patterns and say, okay, the fifth decision I can make, the system can make on its own, and then we start to build confidence around the decision. This is what your machine learning fundamentals are. So core data, when you look at how it's obtained, are I call it the East Coast, West Coast world, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in the West Coast, I feel like a lot of these companies came from the ground up where nothing was there, and you built these, large technology companies and then thought about the businesses that they could disrupt. In the
Mm-hmm.
East Coast, we built the businesses first, and then we thought about the
Okay.
technology after. So the difference is that whenever you think about data, you're also thinking about systems that are like 40 years old, right? You have to go get data from those systems. Then you have to marry it with like things that are being done current day, and then try to see whether we can transform that data to make sense to us. So the value of the data being clean, I think it's extremely important because I can't make sense of the data unless I've actually done the data cleansing, validation, transformation, and then finally using that data to actually make sense out of it. And so multiple things come into play, right? So one is the infrastructure investment, right? You have to have the right, like, uh, you know, snowflakes and data warehouses of the world. You have to have the right technologies to go validate this, because how much can humans do, right? You can't have every line of data that you get, right, whether it's customer data or sales data, to validate against like what you already know, order data for us. But you actually invest in a lot of technology to make rules-based engines, do like validations through like algorithms that you write yourself. And after all of that, you still have a human man in the middle component, right? So the human plays a very big role, because after all these systems kind of have done their job, there are still exceptions that we have to handle. And so then you make sure that humans are involved and able to like, discern that good data from bad data. Then finally, that data is actually utilized into different application systems, and then you finally make sense out of it, and then have a bigger end-to-end picture of what's actually happening in your environment, make sense out of it. Then finally, you have this idea of, automation. Then comes the autonomous aspect of it, and bringing the whole idea that we want to have decision intelligence in different aspects of what we're doing.
Interesting. This process valids if you are like a huge company, or if even if you are like a small brand or a small startup just launching.
So it's interesting, right? The scale of the problem, the magnitude of the problem increases enormously when you're working for a big company.
Sure.
But when you're a small company and you're getting a few hundred orders per week, right? It's, I think, important to like actually sit down and make sure that you can actually observe your own data patterns and start to make sense out of it. Hey, I'm getting 10 orders from, Wisconsin. And that's where like every Tuesday I get these orders. You can set up like a rule and say, let me like make sure that every time Wisconsin orders come, like every week now, let me plan for those extra 10 orders that are coming every week. I know
Hmm.
this happens, on the first of every month or something like that, right? So that, I think, when smaller e-commerce brands are playing, I think there's a lot of work that with the Shopify's of the world that have integrated algorithms that you can actually leverage, or you can build your own and start to like make sense of the data yourself. But larger companies, mid-sized larger companies, I think that you have to invest in all of this infrastructure to be able to make sense.
Yeah, it has become such an important aspect of the business. It's like foundational for everything. Definitely for e-commerce, you need to know everything and take decision based on this data. Gone are the days that you have an experienced founder who can take the decisions and based on past experience. Things are also changing so fast, right? I mean, users are evolving, new generation of users are coming in, and they're using so many different platforms, and yeah, it's becoming you need experts to manage almost every aspect of your business. So if we start from, for example, from supply chains, and like the merge of, I mean, marry AI with supply chain to create like multiples in performance, right? What are some of the, let's say, tools or some of the processes that you've identified lately?
Yeah. Supply chain is a vast ocean. Right? So there's a lot of problems to solve in supply chain. So I took like we look at the end-to-end process and then figure out like some of these core problems that exist, right? So which is like, hey, think about forecasting, think about the order, and think about what happens that is planning until your order comes. And then once it comes, what do you do post, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once it's in the hands of the customer, what happens after that? So this is the post, let's say.
Yeah.
So if I think about those three, in a timeline, and then I think about the applications of these, artificial intelligence, then, for me, it's, as I said, the core fundamentals are always relying on data and, platform and things like that. But above it, I think about the different aspects of like planning, right? So whether it's demand forecasting, supply planning, and so on. Then once you have your actual order, then how do you actually make sure that you have enough inventory to fill those orders? And then finally, when you actually deploy those orders, what happens with returns? What happens after the customers like received it? How do you make sure that the payments are correct? How do you make sure that we don't have any penalties against it, right? So all these aspects, artificial intelligence can play a huge role, right? But as I said before, there's a staggering amount of information that you have yourself, but Gen AI, for example, can start to fill some of the gaps that we don't have in the data itself today, right? And that's, I think, going to be an exciting future, right? Once we start to have some level of understanding of what the capabilities of generative AI are going to be, can you start to say, hey, I have this particular UPC number, but I don't have the remaining attributes. Can I go and fill those gaps, right? Or this looks like that particular product. Can I actually build some more data to test my applications out, right? So I think that um, the three aspects where I see the biggest impact are, one is core infrastructure, data, applications. And then
Mhm.
two is we have the algorithms of like, the applications itself, like where, as I said, forecasting, those kind of things. And then three is when you actually have like how you're thinking about these different developer tools, right? How do you make the jobs of the developers easy? I said developer, but I mean everyone who works in the company, right?
Yeah.
The people behind the people. How are you building these algorithms? But can I also test, like, can I make the QA process faster, right? Can I also like ingest data faster? Like, can I build a data pipeline quickly? Like, those kind of developer tools, I think, are also like areas where I feel AI can play a big role in supply chain.
Yes. And how do you see these being implemented or developed in terms of the tech industry and some of the probably related to the gaps that you mentioned, which I'm very interested in?
Yeah,
Probably we can discuss this later.
yeah. There is a huge, I think about this problem almost every day because some of the things that I see with my West Coast friends, right, my core technology friends, is that they don't have exposure to some of these core problems that I'm talking about, right? We are in the day to day of it. I'm working closely with my business leaderships in different aspects of, say, supply chain. And so I'm familiar with the problems. And even I can't say I'm familiar with the problems because I'm just, right now a student, right? I try to bridge the gap between what I think is happening in the world. And AI is also moving so fast that I can't profess to be an expert in that either. So who is that person who plays that sort of intermediate role where, this circle, part of the AI, and then part of the supply chain, and you're able to marry it and come to a vision, right? This is where I think that it's going to become extremely important to start having these core technologies play a big role into working with large businesses and understanding their problems. And once you work with leaders, and this is many years ago, I saw this at Intel, right? So when I was at Intel as an engineer, this is early days, we built proof of concepts with vertical leaders in different industries with hope that if I solve this problem for the vertical leader, then that rest of that industry will adopt that solution, right? I think this is the only way that a core a technology like AI that's super fast and super evolving is able to go penetrate into an area which is not that familiar to them, but is also like a very scientific, very mathematical
Yeah.
area, right? Like supply chain, for example, it's lots of optimization problems, lot of it's a data science person's heaven actually, right? Because there's a lot of interesting problems to solve. So how do you marry the two? I think that's the way to do it. We need more technologists taking an active interest in trying to go into legacy areas that they haven't touched and start to understand and build partnerships. Like when I say partnerships, I'm not talking about signing some agreement. I'm talking about you sit down with the person who's the expert in supply chain, talk to them every day, figure out how you can do it without wasting their time, without disrupting their day to day because they have a job, right? They
Yeah.
have a job to do.
Sure.
So we have to get to these happy marriages fairly soon for us to actually see the impact evolve immediately.
So all the founders out there are thinking about their next startup. There is a gap here that obviously we identified here.
Yeah,
So
and
hear out.
billions of dollars to be made.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Now it seems that everything needs to move much faster than it used to be, right? Because of
Mhm.
again, these tools are available by competition, by other members of the workflows of the industry, and I know you like to do things very very processed, very detailed. The devil is in the details, as we say, right? So how do you bridge the gap? I mean, in terms of the speed of doing things, because this is also a very very important aspect of everything, I think.
So speed is so paramount because not just because I have any competition, truly, right? It's not competition at all. It's the fact that the consumer is changing. Like everyday people are changing
Yeah.
dramatically, I used to be satisfied with, oh my God, I ordered my groceries, it's going to come in 4 days. No, now I want it if I order it now, I want it in 10 minutes, right? And that level of I want to say, immediacy didn't exist before, which means that, as these, the next generation, right, starts to become acclimatized, they're going to want less wastage, right? They're very, environmental oriented. They want less wastage, but faster service. And they want things that are fun. They want variety, right? They want a huge selection. So if you get into that mindset of this next generation, right, they are the people that keep in mind, you and I saw the rotary phone, and then now we're seeing, we saw the smartphone. And so we have a little bit of patience. We're like, okay, this can be moving slowly, but in 20 years, this generation that's going to grow up right now is not going to have the patience because they're used to everything by the minute, which means that the investments that we're making have to translate into results fairly quickly as well. So time is, you're right, absolutely of essence. And, the experience is important. And so for us to really make that happen faster, I think that we have to not just think about the investments, in how we're thinking about solving these problems, but also picking the right problems to solve, right? That's where prioritization comes into play, right? It's like
Nice.
I have 1,000 things I can be solving, but I have a tiny team, right? How do I make a decision every day on what problem do I want to solve? And how do you keep yourself accountable while you're solving these things, right? It's not just some abstract thing.
Yeah, that's a
That's
big
where I
one.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm a big advocate of product management, right? So
Hmm.
I come from the world of, being an engineer, and then product management evolved into this role that Meta and Google played a big role in creating. And then now I really understand and advocate for the science of product management. Make all the mistakes in your research, understand as much as possible, build like UI designs early enough, go show it to your partners, and then say, okay, I'm going to build a product, because that's what's going to give you a final result that's actually utilizable right away, instead of trying many experiments and failing. So I would say that's one of the key ways to like increase the speed of how we build things. The second is the executive mentality has to change, right? It's like these kind of things. Hey, we need a partnership where I said, I'm not here to waste your time. I'm here to learn from you. You're here to learn from me, and we want to build something quickly. And some of these are not going to be super complete, but we're going to build and give you something, start using
Hmm.
it, help us learn from it, right? That's a very different mindset, right? Because traditional IT is what? It would be like, here's a bunch of requirements, you please write some application. Once that scope is done, then you move on. It's a very waterfall method. In the agile method, I'm writing a bunch of code. I'm giving you the application of the component that I think will bring you the minimum viable product, right? Which will give you the most amount of value in the shortest amount of time. And it's not going to be complete, but have patience with it. Use it, play with it, tell us something good, and then we'll improve it from there, right?
Yeah.
That is a very big mindset shift that needs to happen. But the 0 to 1 mentality, as I call it, right?
Yeah.
They have a lot of patience when it comes to like physical products, right? If you launch like a, they'll know how to experiment with it. Technology also requires the same level of understanding and patience for failure, and saying, let's fail fast, right? But keep improving our processes quickly. So
Yes. Yes. I talk a lot about that. It's kind of a narrow innovation type of mindset, this land and expand type of thing. Start very small, introduce some real value to a smaller number of audience and grow from there with agile mindset, reiterate very, very fast. So traditionally for any e-commerce brand, you have let's say the head of e-commerce position with all those people manage the technical platform, the e-commerce platform, all the other aspects of the business, all the tools, right? And then you have the marketing team, obviously, the sales team. And you talk a lot about product management. So maybe let's set some foundation for that. How do you define product management, and how do you see this introduced to the workforce or the positions in the industry?
wow, that's that's a big question, actually. You're right. I've been so immersed in it that I haven't really given the definition I
Yeah,
think
it's a
about.
new
But
concept.
yeah, I think product management for me is, I would say it's that bridge between great design, great technology, and great like business value. All three in sort of that tripod, managing the needs of the customer at the end of the day and delivering value to the customer, right? The biggest value of a good product management cycle, and I said this before, is prioritization.
Hmm.
An engineer can go write a bunch of code. Okay. They can develop anything, they can write anything, they can start building applications, and everybody
Sure.
feels useful, right? I'm writing code. Great. And I can say this because I was an engineer. So, and
Yeah.
then a designer can design. They can design any number of prototypes. But I think where the value of product management comes in is like, why are you building this particular thing? Who are you building it for? What value are you going to offer to them, and what value are you going to get, right?
Hmm.
These questions have to be like answered by somebody who's answering these questions, right? And that reason, I think there's like a whole idea floating, at least in a West Coast philosophy. I would say product management is the CEO of the product, right?
Yeah.
That's what you'll hear
Hmm.
repeatedly. But I would also say they're also the gopher of the product or the peon of the product, right? You are the catch-all person who's going to make sure this product is successful, no matter what. And you play all roles and you play none of the roles. You have all of the, interest in making it successful, but none of the authority. So it's a little bit of all of that. So it's a lot more than project management. Project management, I think, has a lot to do with schedules and making projects successful from a more tactical standpoint. Product management is a combination of being very strategic and very tactical also, and making sure that a product from inception to design to like delivery is complete.
Of course, and also managing the day-to-day feedback from customers and having this agile mindset and the ability to implement processes very, very fast, even on a daily basis, providing feedback to customers in terms of the product deliverables. And I think this is has a really, really important aspect of doing things in a professional way based on customer insight in a very, very fast way. So
Yeah.
great,
Well
Deepika.
said.
What else do you see right now? I mean, in the industry, that probably some of the largest trends that, and it can be any of the other aspects of the business that you think are worth mentioning.
Yeah, I think that when we think about these surrounding technologies, right, autonomous vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
I think they will have like a huge impact on logistics and last mile delivery, for example, or even middle mile, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there are many, many ways to design how you get the product delivered to your customers. So, if you have like sort of a global mindset on that, I think that, that can change the way we think about it. When I started Hotly, like many years ago, my fashion e-commerce marketplace, I identified two large problems. I said global logistics and global payments are still like some of the core problems that can help you, build products. Like you're in Israel, like if I wanted to buy an Israeli dress, right? Like some designer from Israel that I
Mm-hmm.
love, I still today like it's still a hard proposition,
Very
right? Like
hard,
I
yeah.
still may have to go to like Instagram. I might like it. I don't know if I can trust the quality. Then I might order it, and then 21 days later, maybe I receive the item, right? Even if I
Yeah.
manage to complete the transaction. And then I don't know if I like it, then where do I return it, right? Like it's a whole
Yeah.
like broken system. So I still think that one of the biggest untapped markets is, somebody who revolutionizes, say, like an Alibaba, right? After Alibaba came, which was this global wholesale market, like I'm sitting here and ordering things from China. Why am I not able to order things from anywhere? Right.
Okay.
So I really think that's like a big idea that's out there that nobody has really actually
Interesting.
solved.
Like from local to global in a click of a
Yeah.
button.
Why not? Right.
Yeah.
Like we have global payments. I mean, if you really think about all this blockchain, borderless payments idea, where is it useful? Right.
Yeah.
In a place like this. And think about our e-commerce world, right? Like who are the biggest winners right now in forget e-commerce, but in general, is fashion, right? Your fast fashion people, right, are the ones that are winning. Luxury goods are still surviving, whether economy is down or up, So if people are still, I think we're in that Instagram era where there's a lot of vanity metrics, you know what I mean? So people still want the latest item to wear. They don't want something that everybody else has. They want more choice, which means then we have to open up our mindset. So I truly think that there is a place to, play for a global marketplace. Maybe the closest that I can see anyone come to is probably Amazon, but I wouldn't go buy fashion on Amazon
Yeah.
necessarily, right? So,
Sure.
so I think there's a place to create this idea of seamless end-to-end global logistics, and again, seamless global payments. How the solutions work are, it could be blockchain, it could be any number of things. I think there's a way to think about these things,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a second sort of area that I think that we're untapped. The third is still, I think, like large infrastructure companies, as I keep bringing it up, right? It's like, okay, payments, and think about API connections, and I'm if I'm cleansing data, somebody else is cleansing data, why don't we have like some, shared understanding, like a LinkedIn, when you come on my LinkedIn and you're looking at my LinkedIn page, I can see who viewed my profile. And it's a quid pro quo agreement, right? If I know who viewed my profile, and
Yeah.
they also know who viewed their profile.
Yeah.
So why can't we do that with data, right? Like
Wow.
common sort of
Nice.
data consolidation. I think there's a big idea there also. That why are we repeating and replicating this work? It's not really a competitive mode. That's not where the competitive mode is. The competitive mode is in really understanding, your end customer and providing service to them.
Exactly. Build a
So
connection
we're
with
all,
them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're all like doing all this, work of like, oh, let's put all these data analysts and cleansing and doing manual work when we could all be sharing this work. I think so. There's that. And, lastly, I would say that evolving e-commerce models, right? The last 10 years has been like omnichannel, omnichannel, omnichannel. But I think omnichannel is also going to dramatically change in the next 10 years, right? So I think a customer thinks like a customer, right? You don't think like, oh, this grocery store has two different departments in the company. They think of it as like, I want this thing now. Oh my God, can I get it in the next 20 minutes? Or should I go to the store and get it myself? Right? That's all they want to know. So the way to seamlessly bring that experience, which means that a lot of these companies have to start evaluate their own ways of doing business will have to happen. So
Wow, very, very interesting. Thank you so much for that. I think it's great insights for any leaders out there. And Deepika, I know you're very interested in connecting with founders, product leaders. I know you talk a lot about diversity in tech and supporting female founders based on also your successful newsletter and your Twitter account. I would like to learn more about why you're so passionate about these topics. Also, in
yeah,
your professional life.
thank you for bringing that up, right?
Yeah.
So, I grew up in India and I came to the US 20 years ago. And what I realized was that I had a very different upbringing where, I grew up in a rather patriarchal society, but I was one of three daughters and my parents kind of empowered us to be anything you wanted to be.
Wow.
That was the
Nice.
idea. Yeah, I remember second year engineering, I told my dad, I said, I think I should have been a film director. My dad's like, yeah, okay, but who stopped you, right? And that kind of
Wow.
freedom was there for me. And I realized that it was such a privilege to have that freedom to be whoever you were and know that you were your biggest, advocate or failure point, right? Like if I didn't do something, it was my fault. It wasn't like because somebody told me not to.
Mm-hmm.
That thing wasn't there in my friends. I didn't see it very commonly here, right? Like in Davis, I think I was in a program for masters where maybe I saw maybe 10 other women in a program of 100, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that was my usual, sort of interactions with diversity, so to speak. And I never thought of myself as, oh, I am a woman. These are all men. Like I never had any, difference, right? We're all engineers. We're working on a problem together. That was my mindset. Only like much later in life is when I started to realize that there was a lot of inequity
You
in,
looked at the data, right?
yeah,
Which is
no, I
quite
didn't look at data. I
disappointing
just
even today. Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like, I created a nonprofit called Advancing Women in Product, right? Because I said, so many women fall out of the tech journey. Like after engineering, they might not want to do it, but they're good communicators. And then product management was sort of that in between. If you really enjoy technology, but also enjoyed business, right? So I said, why can't you get into product management? It was this esoteric profession that you didn't know how to get into, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, let's lower the barriers towards that because here's the core truth that I've realized, right? The way to empower women is to give them more wealth, right? Make them part of the wealth equation in a very effective manner. Not your 20% bump, not your 30% bump, not making it equal to your male coworker,
Mm-hmm.
but actual opportunity, right? If they can't prove themselves in that opportunity, then fine, right? They're not competent, but give them the opportunity to do it, right? And what happens in this equation, and I'll give you this number, in STEM roles, right? So engineering roles, so science, technology, engineering, and I forget what the M is, I think management. What happens is in entry level, we're all the same. It's about 40% women and 60% men.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you come to director and above, that number falls to 12%.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
It's 12%. And why is that, right? Like there's like huge amounts of, somebody like took some time off because, personal challenges at home or whatever. But it's not their personal challenges. It's that our work environments are inflexible, right? Where is the idea that, hey, I can work part-time once my child is from 0 to 5? Like, where is that opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
We've all talked a good game of we want to support more women, but I think the more pragmatic things are missing still. And venture world, that's my philosophy too. I try to invest in female first startups, which means that not female founded, not only female founded, right? That's one category for sure, but more about the customer base. If you're building a, I don't know, like a fertility startup, your founders can be men, but you're going to hire more women just by virtue of the fact that the problem you're trying to solve is for a woman-led
For a
problem,
woman,
right?
of course. Yeah.
Right. So I feel like in that way, I think capitalism works, right? It's like, okay, fertility is a problem for 50% of the women in this country. Can we now make billions of dollars? So VC investment goes there. You go hire a bunch of executives that are female and, people in the company that are female and hopefully build a really good culture. So now we've built this, right? So that was sort of the philosophy of how I think about, venture dollars, right? I mean, I'm all about philanthropy, but I'm also a capitalist.
Sure.
And I think that, I think if we put more money in the right places where our focus is, we can all see a collectively better society evolve.
100%. And you mentioned this 12% on the director and VP level, probably. And I think in terms of fundraising, it's even much lower than that. I think it's low single digit or something, right? In
It's
terms of
2%.
percentage. 2%, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, plenty of work there. So, really appreciate your hard work there. So, keep going, keep going. Great. So I'm very interested in work-life balance. I usually ask my guests what they do outside of work. So I would love to learn more about what you do, when
Yeah.
you need to relax, probably unwind.
So I am, I think like my fun comes from like being in, like a lot of glamorous things, right? So I do a lot of work to like center myself. So I do yoga very regularly. I've been a yoga practitioner for about 18 years now.
Wow.
And yeah, so I make it a point to do that, right? But I'm also now into all this spiritual journey of mine, which is like very, focused on meditation, trying to think about the world. And, so I try to like attend more of those kind of sessions now, especially in New York. We have lots of great
Sure.
opportunities. But on the other side of it, also, I'm like very fun loving. So I like to travel. And so then the thing that I seek most is I say this all the time to my friends, like if I'm going to do something, it better elevate my experience. And if it's not, whether it's the form of, the environment or the people I'm with or the activity I'm doing, right? Then I'd rather sit at home and watch Netflix, right? Because even that's like, saving and conserving energy. So I would say, yeah, I think New York offers a lot of great opportunities to do fun
Really
things.
impressive. Nice, nice.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Deepika,
yeah,
how people can find you? Please share also your newsletter and Twitter account and whatever information that you can.
yeah, yeah. So all of my handles, somebody helped me do this a long time ago, so shout out to them, which is they kept it simple. They said have the same identity for everything. So it's all under the handle at YR Deepika. So you can find me on LinkedIn, at Twitter, at or X, and on my newsletter on Substack is also the same. So please find me.
Nice. Great. Deepika, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. Keep up the amazing work.
Thank you for the deep and poignant questions. Some of them I think you made me really think, so I really appreciate the thoughts. And hopefully this information helps other leaders in product and founders.
Sure. I'm 100% confident. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck to you.